What's up, you guys? I'm back again with another video, and today we're talking about some of the most underutilized but up-and-coming specs in the World of Warcraft arena meta. This video is for the people out there that don't always like to follow the meta. They want to play specs that aren't the blatantly OP specs. They want to play specs that are safe and they don't want to get nerfed in the future. And this video is for you guys out there, my real ones. That was a little cringy, but we'll just keep going with it. Right now we're on arenamate.net. I can put the link in the info box down below if you're interested in checking out this website. I use this website a lot. I know some people, shout out to EU, some people in EU get a little upset when I use this website because they think that, it doesn't include all of EU, and that is true, but the meta typically stays the same. It rarely changes, and if it does change based on region, it's usually the healers that are the difference there, not so much the DPS classes. So right now we are on that website and we're looking at the class and spec representation graphs for 2200 plus 3v3. Some people would say, hey, why are you looking at 2200 plus? Because I want to see if these specs are even viable at a higher rating. Yeah, you might see a bunch of different specs at a lower rating, but that usually means that they're not able to push through the bracket as easily, and they have to go somewhere, and typically that means they're going to be at the lower end of the spectrum in terms of rating. But with this, we can see what specs are able to perform at a higher rating, and 2v2 is a little bit more skewed. That's what we're looking at 3v3, but I'll give you an example of why it's a little bit more skewed in 2v2s, unfortunately. We'll talk about that in a second. So starting off here, I'm going to give you an example of what we are kind of looking for and what we're not looking for when we're trying to determine which spec is performing well but flying somewhat under the radar. So you can see this right here. This is from July 17th to July 24th. Every week Arenamate collects this data. So this was about, this was last week, and if anything, we're just going to see an increase on a lot of specs as time goes on because more specs are going to be pushing into this 2200 bracket. So we see right now, as of July 17th, there were 0% of arcane mages found above 2200 a week ago. Not too surprising because arcane's kind of an underplayed spec. You can see a week later, it looks like, the graph leads you to believe that, hey, there are a lot of more arcane mages playing, but you have to look at the scaling. So it's only a less than a 1% increase. This is probably volts on his arcane mage above 2200 if I'm being honest. Not that many mages playing arcane at 2200 as of July 24th, okay? Even though it looks like a promising graph, if I compare this to maybe the Destruction Warlock, I mean, it just fails in comparison. Look how much more prominent, how many more Warlocks there are above 2200 when compared to the Arcane Mage. So what we are looking for is a much more acute curve, something that's much more sharp when compared to the Arcane Mage. And a good example of a spec that I noticed that I saw a lot more in 2v2s and 3v3s recently was the Feral Druid. Feral Druid, surprisingly, is doing quite well, and you can see when compared to the Arcane Mage, it is a massive difference. Both specs were not really prominent maybe about a week and a half ago, but now Feral Druid is making its way up there. It's still no Destruction Warlock, but it does have an acute curve, right? We are seeing a 3% increase, and I'm sure it's getting even stronger now, and that is quite the change. And Feral Druid wasn't played very often at all, not too long ago, because one of its strongest comps, that being jungle, was very strong early on in Legion, or in late in Legion as well, and it was very strong, I would say, for a good bit in the start of Battle for Azeroth. They got nerfed on their damage. They were nerfed time and time again. Their Ferocious Bite was doing so much damage at the start of BFA, and then it got way weaker as time went on. It didn't scale well, but with this new gearing and this new Essence system, them having Crucible of the Flame for extra damage, which is great for setup comps, right? Crucible of the Flame is that starter essence that you acquire early on, and it scales extremely well and does tons of damage at higher ranks, and that is great for setup comps. Great for all classes, honestly. Does so much damage, but it is nice to have that extra burst damage when you do go for that trap, or you do go for that CC chain as a Feral Druid, and you have some burst to follow it up. Now, another spec that pairs very well with Feral is going to be the Survival Hunter. I've been seeing a lot more Survival Hunters as of late for the same reasons you're probably seeing Ferals. Well, no duh, because they're going to be paired often together. Jungle, that being Survival Hunter Feral, has always been a pretty strong comp. It fell off quite a bit once again earlier on in BFA. But Survival Hunters, with all of the essences that are out, Crucible of the Flame once again being very powerful for Survival Hunters because they do rely on a lot of CC and following up their CC with burst, similar to Rep Paladins. Rep Paladins, you know, are strong, not too much of a difference here from week to week, but they do pair well together with Hunters. Paired with Survival Hunters and Ferals is Discipline Priest. Discipline Priest now is starting to make somewhat of a comeback. That's cool for a lot of players that have been wanting to play Disc Priest. You have a lot of solid comp options now. Before you only had Rogue Mage, and now you can start picking up maybe Jungle or even Cupid. Even though Cupid's always had its place, I think these setup comps now do have or should be a lot more effective due to Crucible of the Flame doing so much damage and just utilizing that CC into burst chains. And I think I enjoy those types of comps a lot more than the traditional Warlock comps where I feel like I'm always in CC. For me right now, I'm really looking at Survival Hunters doing very well. I'm looking at Retribution Paladins as a solid option. Obviously, Discipline Priest is the preferred healer for a lot of these comps, and Feral Druids I think are a solid option. Now, if you compare this to, once again, to the Destruction Warlock, you know, they're not really in the same realm, but they are somewhat near breaching that, you know, upper echelon in terms of you can still play these comps and classes at a high rating, but they're still not as like blatantly OP as a Destro Warlock. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because Destro Warlocks might get nerfed at some point, right? People have been complaining about Destruction Warlocks for fucking forever, it feels like. I've been complaining about this class for so long. I personally think it's the most annoying class to fight against in the entire game. They have so much self-healing. They literally have the most CC and control in the entire fucking universe next to Frost Mage. And they also just deal the most ridiculous amounts of damage. And it's been going on for Legion Season 7. There was a little bit in time in BFA when they sucked, and then now that it feels like they've been broken for so long. So Destro Warlock might get nerfed, and that only means good things for some of these classes down here. So I think these specs right now are super solid for you guys to pick up. And obviously, if you're a Discipline Priest, you have these comps, and you can also always pair with classes like, you know, Assassination Rogues and Fire Mage. That's also a solid comp. You know, Holy Paladin is definitely going to be maybe a more preferred healer for this comp, but Disc Priest has more options now. All right, really quickly, we're going to look at the 2v2 bracket. We are now on the 2v2 chart, and the reason why I didn't want to use this one too much for reference is that, well, you'll see why. So, first of all, we have the Feral Druid, right? We have the Feral Druid, a nice curve here, a nice sharp change in participation. We're seeing a lot more Feral Druids above 2200. I mean, you know, percentage wise, there's probably a few players, but this chart should represent, you know, just its effectiveness in general, and I'm sure it's only going to grow as time goes on unless we see any changes. But with that being said, you know, you have the Survival Hunter kind of coming downwards a little bit, but meeting the Feral Druid in its effectiveness. And you're like, okay, well, Survival Hunter is still a pretty solid option, but it's gone down a little bit in playtime as Feral Druids have gone up. And then you have the Demon Hunter kind of coming down a little bit as Mana Burn is not as effective as it once was because a lot of healers have, you know, certain regen. You have mana regen. You have the Windwalker Monk probably coming down, I'm sure, a bit. Yeah, Windwalker Monk coming down a little bit. And they're all about the same area. Even the Destruction Warlock, which is very strong in 2v2s, same representation, same effectiveness, I would say, as a lot of the other specs. Survival Hunter, Feral even doing a little bit better by a hair. But why are all these specs kind of grouped up in the same bracket? Well, we have the two most prominent healers in 2v2s. We have the Holy Paladin and we have the Resto Druid. And this is typically the kind of bunching that you will see in World of Warcraft Arena. You have a lot of specs bunched together, and then you have these dominant specs that take over the ladder because they're super effective, and then players like to play the most effective things. You know, there's not a lot of people that want to play things that they enjoy, or maybe they do enjoy just pooning everybody. There's always a spec or a comp that will dominate the ladder. When we looked at the 3v3 bracket, we saw Rogue Mage at the top. Well, no surprise here for a lot of people. Death Knights just dumpster everything else in 2v2s, it looks like, and it's very apparent when I play 2v2s on my Paladin. I'm playing with a Death Knight a lot of the time. Sometimes with a Hunter. I really like playing with Hunters. Hunter Pally is a lot of fun. But you can see that Death Knight and then just the two dominant healers are miles ahead in 2v2 when compared to some of the other classes in terms of their representation. And once again, that was similar to the 3v3s as well. You have Fire Mage, Rogue, Destruction, Warlock, H-Pal. And then you have all these other classes tightly bunched together at the same bracket because, you know, if I start checking off all these boxes, right, you have like these tiers that are built into the game where all the specs that are, you know, A tier, B tier are bunched together, and then you have the S tier comps just way at the top, that being, you know, Fire Mage, Assassination Rogue, H-Pal, for a ladder, and then the other comps are kind of just one tier lower. However, that is the point of today's video. If those classes see some changes, if we see some changes to Destruction Warlocks, or if we see some changes to Rogue Mage, or we see some changes to Death Knights, that only means good things for you if you pick up one of those classes, or you already have one of those specs or classes that is right on the cusp of becoming one of the top tier comps or specs. With those changes, you might shoot up the tier list, and I think that is awesome since those specs are already super fun to play, they're underutilized, and you can stand out from the rest. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs. If you have any more questions or suggestions, you can let me know in the comment section below. If you're looking for your own inexpensive, personalized coaching, you can check out my Patreon page somewhere on the screen. You can also check out my Twitch live stream if you have any more questions or you're looking for some more personal interaction, and I'll see you guys next time.